Yeah, my name is Ben Hewitt. I work for the Utah Department of Transportation as the pre-construction engineer in our central office in Salt Lake City. I'm going to briefly cover the topic of change management with a focus on creating a culture of innovation. Just a little background on UDOT. Yeah, we do like to try new things. We're always working on that culture of innovation. And with that comes a lot of opportunity for change management. So I'll try to keep this presentation short, so it might be a little bit generic, but hopefully it can share a few items that will help the conversation with the workshop today. So a few principles to start off with. These can potentially lay that groundwork for the culture of innovation. Cultural understanding, I kind of mentioned this is an important first step, is to kind of understand what your existing culture is. I think the key point there being, look for ways to work to the strengths of your existing culture. The next thing is when talking about leadership, it's pretty cliche to say that, in change and innovation, leadership is critical. I think a couple points to think about there are your leadership and how you work together that ensures that you address the alignment of the views early on in the process, and it's not just at top level leadership, but it comes from all, and that you're fostering kind of that leadership trust throughout your organization. I think that goes a long way in change and innovation. As far as engagement, I think there, a lot of people talk about communication, very important. That's not really the same as engagement, and I kind of saw this, at least I saw this word in Tom's presentation quite a few times about engagement. I think I've got a few examples a little bit later on about things like champions and pilot projects that I think can help push that when it comes to change and innovation. Action. So here I want to talk a little bit about finding that balance between planning, preparing, and then acting. I think me personally, I probably tend to spend a little bit too much time in the planning, preparing phase, and it's hard to kind of jump into that action phase. But I think the important point here is just be a little bit aware of, hey, sometimes it's just time to go, and you'll learn and figure out where you need to be by acting. Adaptation. When you implement change or innovations, it takes a lot of work, and I think the key point here is make sure you follow through with that initiative and continuously improve, or you can lose momentum. Sometimes it's like, oh, we're done, we've implemented it, but if you don't follow through, you kind of lose some of that momentum, and I think that can hinder becoming that, having that what's next mentality in your organization. So now, as far as a few tools and techniques, when we're talking about enacting change and promoting innovation, a lot of people already have mentioned the use of champions. Couple things about champions. I think there's a lot of different ways that champions can be identified. They're all good. One really good way is when people kind of volunteer themselves, and either formally or kind of by default. I mean, we have an example of there's an individual in my group that happened to be a pilot, and he's in our survey group, and we started talking about using UAS, unmanned aerial systems, or drones, and all of a sudden it just kind of by default he was fielding all the questions, and when it came to a policy and things like that, he was kind of leading the policy. And so I think look for things like that in your organization when you're talking about change and innovation. Another one for identifying champions is maybe somebody that has had a bad experience with that, with something. There's another example in our organization. I think we had a project manager that, when we were talking about a construction manager, general contractor, or CMGC process and project, they had a couple projects that struggled a little bit, and now that project manager, through engagement and some of the other principles that we talked about, has kind of become the champion of some of our better improvements in our CMGC process because of that. Information sharing and communication. One thing I thought of here is, sometimes it's a good idea to test your message on someone that's not been involved before you kind of go out for prime time on that. It helps with proper communication of your vision and alignment of views. I think we've learned sometimes in the past when you're close to something and you start rolling a initiative out, sometimes people, you kind of assume things, or you assume people know things, and that can hurt in trying to roll out that change. A big one for us is at UDOT has been a risk-based approach. So when we're implementing a change or an innovation, we've had some pretty good luck with using a risk-based approach, or usually it involves holding some sort of risk analysis workshop. I think what that does, what that means is, we'll get together a group of people, we'll talk about risks, we'll talk about innovations, populate like a risk register. This can help in documenting a path forward to ensure that success. One of the other things that I've seen is that it also allows some individuals that may be initially resistant, it gives them kind of a voice, and they get to, talk about some of their concerns. Being heard goes a long way towards breaking down that resistance to change. Industry partnering, one of the things that seems to work really well for us is, we have a great relationship with our our partners like construction contractors and consultants, AGC and ACEC. We have pretty active, innovative contracting programs, design build, CMGC. You can't help but enact change and promote innovation when you're working with those partners in those environments. I think Tom said is, by default you're in a change environment when you're dealing with those types of partners and projects. A couple things as far as challenges and barriers to change management and innovation. I listed organization size there. This is more of just an awareness thing. How your group size can help or hurt. I think it's just being aware of that and how it may shape your strategies. Some initiatives work well, implementing full organization wide, while others may need to be broken up or tried on a smaller target. We tend to use pilot projects for certain things, and that seems to work well to kind of limit that size when you're unsure of that. Another thing I listed up there was history. For an example, UDOT right now, we're transitioning from a lot of our business systems from systems that we built internally to be more off the shelf or software as a service. Our existing systems have a lot of history, both the systems themselves and the people using them, and we've added a lot of things to them along the way, and it's important for us to kind of understand the people and those systems as we're moving forward, because that can be a big challenge to implementing and enacting that change. Ego can definitely come into play, be a challenge and a barrier, especially when you're early adopters of something. I think the point here is make sure, instead of thinking that, we were here first, we know everything, that you learn from others. I've had some great personal experiences with working with other doing peer exchanges with other states that maybe used a process that we maybe developed or something, and they've improved that, and then we were able to kind of take some of those improvements back. So I think there you just got to kind of take a step back and not think that you know everything. And then the last bit there was, think about how your formal processes can either help or hurt, your change and innovation. There's kind of a pendulum there. I know that for us, it seems like we're always searching for that sweet spot as far as having super formal and, documented processes to not really having a process at all. And I think, that changes over time, and I think there's probably a sweet spot in there that you kind of have to find. So anyway, those were some of the thoughts I hope can start the conversation, and thank you.